When individuals mysteriously vanish, there's a big chance that they were abducted. Abduction cases are very rarely solved, and many of them don't even contain enough evidence for the case to move forward. Abduction and kidnapping cases are at a high risk of becoming cold cases over time. These 5 victims that vanished are still missing and are believed to have been abducted. Number 5. Tamilynn Leopard was a model, beauty queen, and charismatic 18-year-old woman who vanished on July 6, 1983. Tammy's friends and relatives later reported to police that in the months prior to her disappearance, her behavior changed dramatically. She apparently began showing signs of paranoia and switched to a more introverted personality. This is all very odd behavior for the otherwise bubbly, outgoing, and optimistic teen. Her mother claimed that Tammy expressed fear that she was in danger. Every time the phone rang, she would ask who it was. Her mother finally pressed for answers, and Tammy hesitated to release any information, simply stating that she saw something she shouldn't have, and that something is still unknown to this day. Things started to quickly spiral out of control as Tammy started suffering from psychotic breaks and meltdowns. On July 1st, she went outside and found that the front door was locked behind her, so she used a bat to smash the front window and even attacked a resident of the home. Due to this outburst, she was admitted to a mental facility for evaluation. Her medical records from this visit showed that no drugs or alcohol were in her system. She was released after 72 hours when her mother picked her up and she confessed that she was in danger, and that if anything were to happen to her, she wanted her mother to seek revenge against that person. On July 6th, Tammy told her mother that she was going out with a male acquaintance. Despite her willingness to leave, she allegedly told her mother that she feared the man she was going with. The pair went to downtown Cocoa Beach for a day in the city. This male friend later told police that they got into an argument and he kicked her out of the car, leaving her in the bustling city without an ID, any money, or even a pair of shoes on. Witnesses spotted Tammy later that day trying to hitch a ride from a passerby, but that was the last time that she was ever seen. When she failed to return home, her mother feared the worst and filed a missing persons report as soon as possible. A search ensued and carried on for several months, but investigators were never pointed in a promising direction. There were many suspects, including Tammy's male friend, but there wasn't enough evidence to move forward with any person of interest. The exact fate of Tammy is still a mystery, but police believe that she was abducted while trying to hitch a ride home. Number 4. 21-year-old Su Leggett was working as a secretary in her father-in-law's cotton gin company when she went missing in October of 1984. The last person to see Kim before she vanished was a customer that came into the store at around 4:30 p.m. that day. The witness explained that Kim assisted them with weighing a large order of produce. From what this witness had to say, Kim seemed to be her usual cheery self. Within the following 30 minutes, an additional witness claimed they saw Kim standing in the parking lot next to her car while talking to 2 men that had pulled up in white sports cars. Although Kim didn't seem to be in any danger at the moment, she allegedly had an angry and stressed expression. Around 5 p.m., a new customer came in for another produce purchase, but Kim was nowhere to be found. Before this, around 4:45, Kim's parents received a disturbing phone call. A man with a deep voice told them that their daughter had been abducted and they demanded a ransom for her safe return. Her parents later told police that they thought it was some sort of joke and that Kim was a part of it. It wasn't uncommon for her to pull pranks and make jokes, although they were never on the topic of something so unsettling. They casually called their daughter at work just to ease their worries, assuming she would answer and share a laugh with them. Countless calls went unanswered, and the couple started to realize that something wasn't right. They drove to the company and found that Kim's textbooks and other belongings had been left open on her desk. Obviously, they weren't able to find Kim anywhere. A few more hours passed, with no sign of her, and by the following day, her parents and husband filed a missing persons report. During the search for Kim, officers collected the previously mentioned evidence, which only included witness testimonies. Her family kept hope alive even as several months flew by with no sign of their beloved daughter. One day, there seemed to be a break in the case when the Leggetts received a ransom note in the mail. According to her parents, the handwriting used in the letter itself, which demanded a ransom of $250,000, resembled Kim's own handwriting. However, the envelope label for the postage was written in a dramatically different style. Experts analyzed the letter and said that the label was written by an older male in a hurry. Police assumed that the kidnapper forced Kim to write the letter as a sign that she was still alive, which would further entice her parents to hand over the cash. After this, the case never moved forward. Some suspects were considered and some rumors began to fly, but nothing of significance could be confirmed and the case remains cold to this day. Number 3. In this case, a woman was involved in a minor car accident which she allegedly walked away from unscathed. The problem is, no one knows where she walked to or what happened to her after that, as she suddenly vanished. Mara Murray was a 21-year-old devoted college student attending the University of Massachusetts Amherst nursing program when she disappeared in February of 2004. On the night, Mara left the campus and drove toward North New Hampshire. During the later investigation, Mara's father, Fred, shared that he thought Mara was driving to Bartlett, where the family had visited and even vacationed on several occasions. Phone records also showed that she called a cabin hotel that the family had stayed at to inquire about room vacancies. Still, Fred had no idea why she was heading that way, especially considering she didn't bother to mention the trip to her family. Around 7 p.m. on the day she left, her car stalled while taking a sharp turn and caused her to wreck into a snowbank. Her car was scheduled to be repaired the following day, which made her impromptu trip even more puzzling. She'd been warned not to drive the car very far from home in case it broke down, which she obviously disregarded. A witness that lived across the street from where the wreck occurred rushed out to see the collision to check on the lone woman. Mara explained that she was fine and said that she had already called police, but that was later proven to be a lie. As a safe measure though, the witness also called the police, who arrived as quickly as possible. They weren't fast enough though, and Mara had already vanished from the scene before their arrival. Records state that there was evidence on the passenger side of the car that suggested Mara had hit her head and probably suffered a serious injury or perhaps even a concussion, which would later support the theory that she got lost in the woods and died from exposure. However, Fred called police to report his daughter missing, and a search investigation sparked, and witnesses from the area came forward and stated that they had seen Mara along the back roads looking for a ride. These witnesses either declined her request or witnessed her efforts from a distance. This information supports the theory suspected by both Fred and detectives that Mara was abducted while she was stranded. Mara's fiancé received a call about a day later in which a woman stayed silent on the line but could be heard breathing. Despite being unable to confirm her voice, he insists that the call was from Mara and could have been a forced call demanded by her captor. Mara was never heard from, and although she's presumed deceased at this time, there's still no evidence to confirm her passing. The Murray family spoke out about police efforts in the first stages of the search. They complained by saying officers at the scene of the wreck should have immediately started searching the area instead of waiting for the missing persons report. If Mara could have been found looking for a ride, maybe her life would have been spared. They also mentioned that officers told their other daughter that the first day was too dark for a search to be conducted. Whether or not these mistakes ultimately played a role in Mara's disappearance is up for debate either way, but the now cold case is still unsolved. Number 2. The majority of abduction cases revolve around a young woman or a girl being snatched up by disturbed strangers. It's easy to forget that people of any gender, age, or race can be the target of a kidnapper. Danny Goldman was 18 when an intruder barged into his home and took him from his family on March 28, 1966. The suspect broke into Danny's Surfside, Miami family home early in the morning before the sun had even risen. He tied up Danny's parents, using a weapon to threaten them into submission. He then ordered the couple to hand over $10,000 as he held their son captive, using his safety as a threat. The couple were unable to offer any money at the time, but the suspect was willing to make a deal. He took their son with them and left the home, explaining that he expected $25,000 by later that day in exchange for Danny. The chilling last words that Danny's father ever spoke to him were, "Do what the man says." The Goldmans contacted police, who helped them sort out a plan, but the captor never called them like he said he would. The deal never went through and Danny was never seen again. The case received impressive media attention, and Danny's missing status was a daily headline, with residents in the area obsessing over the troubling case that seemed to become more and more obscure and confusing over time. Attention was inevitably snatched by newer and bigger stories and cases, leading the community to slowly forget about Danny. The case eventually went cold, technically speaking, but some people worked to reopen and investigate the case in recent years. Former classmates and neighbors of Danny's have put their amateur sleuth skills to test by researching the case. One detective even dug so deep into police files and evidence that he constructed a theory concerning that their police were responsible in Danny's case. Some information has suggested that the cops themselves were working with a nameless criminal involved in the mafia and cartels in Mexico. While a corruption like this is certainly possible, it begs the question, what would a mafia member want with a ransom, and an innocent young man? Considering the kidnapper never came back for his ransom, it's fair to assume that the attack wasn't really about the money at all. This case is still labeled as unsolved, but since the resurgence of interest in 2013, it seems there have been new details and facts uncovered. Number 1. The abduction case of Jody Highs is a relatively popular case thanks to Jody's local fame as a successful news anchor in Mason County, Iowa. She was a well-liked and active member of the community who was also beloved by her relatives, friends, and co-workers. On the morning of June 27, 1995, at around 4 a.m., Jody was scheduled to be on air, but she didn't arrive on time. Eventually, a co-worker of hers, Amy, called Jody to wake her up. Amy described their conversation as normal, and Jody said that she overslept but was getting ready for the day and would clock in shortly. She didn't come across as upset in any way. Jody still failed to show up though, and Amy had to fill her spot. Later in the morning, Jody's director grew concerned and reported to Jody's apartment after she missed several of his calls. Before even visiting her unit, the director found a chaotic scene near Jody's vehicle in the parking lot. Her personal belongings were thrown on the ground and signs of a struggle were clear. The director assumed that Jody was abducted and forced into the vehicle. He took initiative and called the police, who instantly went to work investigating the case and searching for Jody. Witnesses that lived in the apartment complex said that they heard screams around the time that she was likely taken, but no one had actually seen anything. A partial handprint not belonging to Jody was found on the window of her car. It was scanned and documented, but a match was never found. Jody's story covered headlines and broadcasts as it was unfolding, but it eventually went cold and the public eye looked away. Convicted criminal Tony Jackson was one person of interest in the case, and he confessed to taking Jody's life in 1988 while under the investigation for other crimes. He told police where to find the body, but the area showed no signs of Jody ever being there. Tony later recanted his confession and said that he lied in an effort to be granted a plea deal. John Van Cise was a person of interest because he was the last person to see her alive. In 2017, police collected data from GPS in 2 of his cars. Whatever they found wasn't enough to move forward with him as a suspect. That was the last time attention was given to the case, and Jody's fate is an unsolved mystery, but police confirmed that she was likely abducted and is presumed deceased until evidence proves otherwise. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. If you loved it, maybe consider subscribing. But I've been Ty Knots, and I'll catch you in the next one.